Right. Clause 6.12 Information Security Risk Assessment. Here's what actually happens in most companies going for ISO 27001 somebody, and let's call him Dave, because Dave is always the one. Dave gets handed the risk assessment. Dave is a senior engineer at a 15-person software company. Dave has a product roadmap, an on-call rota, and a slowly dying will to live. And now Dave has a spreadsheet, 200 tabs color coding, nobody agreed on, a heat map. Ooh, a heat map. Adorable. And that spreadsheet gets opened exactly twice. Once when Dave builds it, once when the auditor asks for it, and in between, it sits in a SharePoint folder called Compliance, Final V3, Final Actual Final, quietly rotting. Sound familiar? Yeah, thought so. So let me be blunt about what the standard actually asks for, because it is not that spreadsheet. Clause 6.12 does not say produce a risk register. It says the organization shall define and apply an information security risk assessment process. Process, that's the word. A repeatable thing you run more than once. Not an artifact you generate in a panic 3 weeks before your stage 1. And the standard is weirdly specific about what that process has to do. 5 things. Let's go through them. Because this is where people fudge it. First, establish and maintain information security risk criteria. 2 sets. You need risk acceptance criteria, meaning what level of risk are you actually willing to live with, written down before you start. And you need criteria for performing risk assessments, meaning when do you run this thing and how. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most companies write their acceptance criteria after they've scored the risks. Because if you set the threshold first, you might have to do something about the results. If you set it afterwards, funny thing, everything lands just under the line. What a coincidence. What are the odds? That's not risk management. That's grading your own homework with the answer sheet open. Second requirement. Your process has to ensure that repeated risk assessments produce consistent, valid, and comparable results. Read that again. Repeated. The standard is telling you right there in the text that you're going to do this more than once, and that if Dave runs it in March and someone else runs it in September, you should be able to put the two side by side and actually learn something. Which means your scoring has to mean something. If high likelihood is just vibes, then 2 assessments are not comparable. They're 2 different people's moods, 6 months apart. Define your scales. Write down what a 3 actually means. Boring, yes. It's also the entire difference between a risk process and a feeling survey. Third, identify the information security risks, specifically risks to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information within the scope of your information security management system. Confidentiality, integrity, availability, that's the frame. Not generic business risk, not what if a competitor undercuts us information risk. And this is the bit everyone skips. Identify the risk owners named human, actual people. Here's the most distressingly honest sentence I can give you about ISO 27001. Most risk registers have a column called owner, and every single row says TBD, or my favorite, it says IT. It is not a person. IT cannot be phoned. IT does not lie awake at night. A risk owned by everyone is a risk owned by nobody, and you have built a document whose only function is to be shown to someone once. For our little SaaS company, that means the risk around customer data in the production database has a name against it, probably the CTO, and she knows it's hers. She agreed to it out loud. That's ownership. Fourth, analyze the risks. 3 steps in order. Assess the potential consequences. If the risk materializes, assess the realistic likelihood of it happening, and then determine the levels of risk. Consequence, likelihood, level. That's it. Not complicated, but do it properly, and it will tell you things you didn't want to know, which is rather the point. Fifth, evaluate the risks. Compare your analysis results against the criteria you set in step 1. Remember those, and then prioritize the analyzed risks for treatment. Prioritize. Because you cannot fix everything, and any process that pretends otherwise is a fantasy with a heat map attached. And then the last line of the clause, the one everybody forgets. The organization shall retain documented information about the information security risk assessment process about the process, not just the output. Both matter, but the standard specifically wants the method written down so somebody who isn't Dave can pick it up and run it the same way. Which, by the way, is the whole point if your risk assessment only works when Dave does it. You don't have a process, you have Dave. And Dave is going to get a better offer at some point, and he will take your entire information security management system with him in his head. Now briefly, so you know where this sits, Clause 6.11 is the general bit about actions to address risks and opportunities. 6.13 is risk treatment, what you actually do about what you found, and that's where the statement of applicability lives. 6.12 is the engine in the middle. Get it wrong and everything downstream is built on sand. I'm not a certified lead auditor. I'm someone who reads the standard and gets irritated by theater. So take that for what it's worth and go read Clause 6.12 yourself. It's about a page. But here's the dare. Open your risk register right now. Today. Look at the owner column. Then look at the date it was last modified. If the owners say TBD or the last edit was the week before your audit, you don't have a risk assessment process. You have a souvenir. Go and fix it. Name an owner on every single line and put the next review date in the calendar before you close the file. Do that this week, and you'll be ahead of most of the companies who already passed.